So I wanted to make like a little explanation for English speakers about the controversy that is going on right now with the inclusive language in the Spanish version of Spider-Man, because I think that it's a topic that because of the language barrier, like people who speak only English will not really understand like the extent of how bad this is and why Spanish people are so much against this. So I will explain first the controversy very fast, and then I will go on the explanation about the language. And the thing is that there was the Spanish version of the new Spider-Man game has inclusive language, and just for starters, I personally reject the inclusive language nomenclature because this is something that like this language is not inclusive at all. It's not more inclusive that we already have. We already have inclusive language. And the reason they call it inclusive language is as most things that what people do so they can use the name to pretend that they are in favor of the good thing and you are against the good thing because you are against inclusive language and inclusive is good. So they call it that way, but it's a very different thing actually. It's just something that they do to virtue signal. So, but the game has in the Spanish-speaking versions, like in the Latin version and the Spanish version, has inclusive language, and it has it in the story that you cannot skip in any way because the characters speak in that way, and there is also a podcast that has the character all the time speaking, and she speaks in inclusive language. And there was one of the most popular Spanish YouTubers was streaming the game. This guy in the screen is called El Rubius, and he was streaming, and the podcast came in, and he was like, "What the fuck is this?" And he didn't say anything, absolutely any word. He just put a face like, "What the fuck is this?" And he turned the podcast off. And all of the woke tribe in Spain has gotten up in arms against him and calling everyone who deactivates the podcast, like an intolerant. Basically, you are a Nazi if you don't use the inclusive podcast. And so basically, before this, the excuse was that, oh, these are optional things why you complain, but now you are forced to play it or else you are a Nazi. Basically, that's how this goes. And that's kind of the peak of the controversy, but what I wanted to explain is why Spanish people look at this language in the way that we do, because like if you are just told that, oh, Spaniards are against inclusive language, you may think, okay, why they are against inclusive language? I mean, it's inclusive. And the thing is that it's not, because the Spanish language already has tools to speak in that way that are organic. So I'm going to explain a little of the how Spanish works. So Spanish is a very gendered language. So you in English don't really have a lot of gendered language, and most of your words are not gendered. You have some, like for example, the typical the he for masculine, then you have they for neutral, and then she for feminine. Okay, in case you didn't know that. So in Spanish, the equivalent for this will probably be él for he and ella for feminine, and for neutral we have a lot of things. Low is one, but you have a lot of. But the thing is that if you were to say something like, for example, a doctor, you will just say doctor, and this will be the masculine, it will be neutral, and it will be feminine. You will just need doctor, doctor, and doctor. The three things. And what we will say will be, we will say doctor for male, doctor for neutral, and doctora for female. And most of the female words is not an always rule, but most of the female words basically end in A, and the masculine words usually end in O, like for example, Médico is another word that means doctor in Spanish. We'll have médico will be masculine, médico will be neutral, and médica will be feminine. There are obviously exceptions to these rules. So what happens is basically that everything we say in any conversation is continuously gendering things. But the thing is that we actually, the way that Spanish works is, you may have heard that we have masculine and feminine, but actually it's not exactly like that. What we have is neutral and feminine. But then, because we have a feminine, the neutral is also used for masculine. But technically, the words itself are neutral. So, médico is really not a masculine word. It's a neutral. We have médico for neutral and médica for female. But obviously, because we have these two, if you are going to talk about a man, you will use médico as well. Doctor instead of doctora, because it's neutral, it can be used as a masculine. The thing, so inclusive language is basically using the neutral. We already, you are going to talk about in a way that you want to refer to a group of men and women, you will use the neutral. If you want to talk about non-binary or whatever, which is the whole non-binary thing also adds another layer to this conversation, because the mere existence of something like 32 genders and whatever is something that is very highly debated nowadays. But let's put that aside for now, and let's say that you want to use the neutral for a group or for non-binary or whatever. In Spanish, you will just say médico or doctor, and that's it. And that's it's grammatically correct, is inclusive because it means neutral, and it's organic because everyone talks this way. But then they came the woke feminists who said, oh, we can't virtue signal with this, so how do we virtue signal about this topic? So they started to claim that the Spanish neutral, they don't want this, they don't want the Spanish neutral. They don't accept it. It's not enough. They don't want. So they want a new neutral that is even more neutral than the neutral, because they are special. And if they claim that they want a new language, they can virtue signal about it against the people who just want to talk normally. So they basically made up what you have already heard, which is the infamous Latinx, which is using the X for things. So, for example, when they are going to say doctor, they use this for everything. Instead of doctor, they will write doctors or doctors, which is it's basically completely impossible to pronounce most of the things that they want to write. And then the other version that I think they invented because they noticed that the X is impossible to pronounce is the E, which basically be, instead of saying doctor, wait, I'm going to maybe, so instead of doctor, you will say doctore for basically everything. Instead of saying doctor, doctora, médico, we'll say medice, doctore, ingegnere. Basically, we'll use the E for everything. Now, the issue is also that, as I say, the whole of Spanish language is gendered. So basically, if we were going to say a line, let's say, for example, the line that they use in the line that happens in the podcast that initiated all of this debacle, was something like I think it was something like mi epidemiólogo favorito. Favorito, or something like that. I think it was a line or the famous epidemiologist. Basically, this will be he's my favorite epidemiologist. Like, I don't know how to say that in English. Epidemiologist, something. So basically, or maybe it was is a famous epidemiologist or something like that. So basically, if we're going to translate it to English, will be like, he is my epidemiologist. Okay. So basically, the only thing here that will be masculine will be this. And if you were trying to make this, I don't know, in neutral, you will say they are, I guess, my favorite epidemiologist. So the thing is that in the version of the game, instead of saying él es mi epidemiólogo favorito, that he's my favorite epidemiologist, where they transformed everything into they changed all of the letters to an A. So basically it's something like Le es mi epidemiólogo favorite. Because the L, they changed the L for a Le. Le es mi epidemiólogo favorite. So it sounds bad, and maybe because you are not Spaniard, you can't notice how bad this sounds, so I'm going to try to make a comparison. So the comparison will be, you have he, they, she. So imagine that to make like a translation to the Spanish language, you didn't have he. Imagine that he doesn't exist. You only have they and she. So they, it will be used for neutral and also will be used for masculine. Like imagine every time you want to mention someone masculine, you also use they. But also, your words are not gender. So this is why this is a difficult thing to translate, and why I say it's hard to explain and to understand. So let's say that these people come and tell you that they do not accept that they is a neutral. They want a even harder neutral than this. So they introduce, like, let's say, not the A, because you use a lot of A's in English. So let's say that an A. So everything has to be changed. So instead of saying she, you have to say sha and thy, for example. And then for every word, like they wouldn't accept, for example, that epidemiology is a neutral word and favorite is a neutral word. They will say, no. They are not neutral words. We want a new neutral word that is even more neutral. So they will force you to say, instead of favorite, favorata, and instead of epidemiologist, this sounds like Spanish now, epidemiologia, something like, it's trying to, I don't know how to even pronounce it in English, epidemiologia, so it will be something like thy is my favorita epidemiologia, something like that. Look, so imagine that for every word that you have to say in every conversation, they will want you to say something like that. Instead of saying they are my favorite or he's my favorite epidemiologist, you will say that is my favorite epidemiologia. And you will have to talk like that, like all the time for everything. So yeah, it sounds weird, and that's basically our les mi epidemiologue favorite. It sounds very, very, very bad, and it doesn't make sense because, as I say, we already have neutral, which is using the version that is also used for the masculine. So there is absolutely no need to make this destruction of the language. So that's why people are angry, and we are also angry because all of the bias that this has behind, because this is always promoted by feminists who want you to use the X and you say Latinx and going to introduce a lot of things that don't make sense and make the thing is that this is a thing that makes very obvious that they just want to virtue signal. Because if you really your issue is that, oh, I believe in using neutral language instead of gendered language because gendered language is sexist, okay, you will use the neutral that the language already has. But the fact that you say, no, we want a more special neutral language than that, it shows that you basically want to be special and virtue signal. You wanted something you could use to put yourself as morally superior to other people because you use inclusive language and other people use like old plain sexist Spanish language. When you are basically doing nothing, you're just making language more complicated. People using this in real life, and I have seen people try to use this in real life. Like everyone look you like you are a complete idiot because you probably are an idiot if you use this language. and a lot of people, transsexual and gay people also hate this thing because it's like this is not doing anything to include me. This is just completely stupid. So yeah, it's not an exact comparison. Like the difference between Spanish and English is too big to make a realistic comparison. This is the closest plus probably that I can make. Like someone goes to English to say that they is not neutral enough and doctor is not neutral enough, so they want you to say doctor instead of doctor, and they want you to say die or doi. Doi doctor is famous, and every time you speak, you have to say it like that. And this is a language that they themselves don't. Like you can see a lot of instances of them trying to speak in inclusive language and they instantly fail to it. They say one word in inclusive language and then the next word is a masculine or a feminine because it's impossible to talk this way. And now you have all of the wokes trying to say like, oh, why are you so scared of an A? And they purposely try to ignore everything that is around this, the ideology, the stupid of trying to speak organically. And also, I will say that, I mean, it's a very interesting claim to say that you are scared of an A when the whole reason that the A was invented was because they were scared of the O. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that woke people are very consistent on what they say because again they just want to virtue signal. So I don't know if it's clear with this explanation. I hope it is. I hope it is as complex as it looked by all of this because it's really as that complex to try to talk like this. Like no one in the world will talk like this. Normally, you will have to brainwash the entire society for several generations to force them to speak like this since they are babies. To basically teach them a complete new language only for an extremely small minority of activists, because not even the people who are like transsexual or something want this language to be used. So that's basically it. And at least I did this time 2 videos in a short time. It wasn't like half a year. So if you want to see mature drawings or whatever, well, I have been shadow banned on Twitter, so you can only see one tweet from me at a time. You can see my threads. I have to speak tweet by tweet. And Patreon is also doing shenanigans and forcing me to delete stuff, so the future is not too bright. So if you want, you can support me, I guess, on Patreon for now if I don't do something about that, and follow me in the social media that I have. In my Twitter, I have a lot of social media. Mostly I'm Kukuruyo everywhere, so just search for me on social media and that's where I am. So goodbye.